Have you ever stood in your own kitchen, just like holding a spatula or wiping down a counter, and you're talking to the person you married, but you suddenly realize you are essentially speaking to a gray wall?
Oh, yeah. Like they aren't even there.
Right. And I don't mean, they're distracted by a text message or deeply engrossed in a football game.
Sure, that's normal distraction.
Exactly. I mean, you are standing 3 feet away, you are speaking perfectly audible English, and you can actually feel your words physically hitting the invisible barrier between the two of you, like sliding down their forehead and dropping dead on the linoleum.
It's a very specific feeling.
It is. You aren't just being ignored in that moment. You are being actively unrecognized, if that makes sense. It's this incredibly specific, deeply hollow sensation.
Well, it changes the entire temperature of a room, doesn't it?
Oh, completely.
It's this profound, almost atmospheric lack of engagement. Because like you said, when someone is simply distracted, there's usually a subtle physical tell,
Like they put a finger up or something.
right? A raised finger saying 1 second, or a quick glance, or a slight nod of acknowledgement, even if they aren't fully processing what you've said.
Yeah, you at least know they know you're in the room.
Exactly. But what we are talking about today is the total absence of that acknowledgement.
The void?
Yes. It is a conscious or sometimes subconscious withdrawal of presence.
Right.
And that behavioral pattern leaves a very, very specific footprint on the person on the receiving end.
And that footprint is exactly what we are unpacking today in this deep dive.
It's a heavy one.
It really is. We're getting deep into a very quiet, often completely unspoken dynamic that takes root in, honestly, millions of households.
Unseen, but very much felt.
Right. We are looking at the mechanics of what happens when a partner, and in the specific psychological archetype from the source material we are examining today, it is often a husband who simply stops listening.
Yeah, we're going to explore the weaponization of silence.
And the bizarre rationalizations people use to justify ignoring their spouse, right?
Hmm.
Plus, how this one-sided communication subtly destroys a relationship from the inside out.
I do think it's critical to frame our approach right away, though.
Good point. Let's do that.
Because when you talk about marital dynamics, especially ones that often fall along traditional gender lines, it is very, very easy to slip into taking sides.
Or declaring a villain.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But our lens today is purely analytical. We want to be totally behavioral about
That's
this.
looking at the facts.
Yes, we are looking at the why. Like, why does a seemingly functional adult retreat into a hostile silence?
What's the payoff for them?
Exactly. What are the structural power dynamics at play? We are going to deconstruct the behavioral loop that traps both people.
And crucially, we'll explore the nonverbal strategies that actually disrupt this pattern when talking has completely failed, which is the most fascinating part to me.
It's incredibly practical.
I am so eager to tear into this because it addresses a quiet discomfort that I think so many of you listening have felt, but maybe you just haven't had the language to name it yet.
It's hard to articulate silence.
It is. It feels like this invisible weight you carry around your own house. And the first major concept we need to tackle is what happens to your own sense of self when you are subjected to this over years.
Source calls it silent erosion.
Silent erosion, yeah. And the literal weight of your own voice.
So if we look at the psychology of communication, humans are hardwired for reciprocity.
It's a ping pong game.
Exactly. When you speak, you are sending out a bid for connection. If I ask you, how was the commute today? I am not just asking for traffic data.
Right, you don't actually care about the I-95 backup.
No, I am asking for a micro moment of emotional attunement. I'm saying, I see you, connect with me.
And when that bid is met with absolute silence,
Or, a vague, dismissive grunt without any eye contact, the brain registers it as a micro-rejection.
No.
Yeah. And the silent erosion occurs when these micro-rejections compound over a decade.
because it's not just one time.
Right. The person speaking doesn't just get annoyed. They begin to subconsciously adapt. They begin to minimize the importance of their own thoughts. They assume that because their words aren't landing, their words must not have any actual value.
Wow. We are so culturally conditioned to picture a failing relationship as this massive cinematic screaming match.
Oh, totally. Throwing things, yelling.
Right. We picture shattered plates, lawyers, dramatic betrayals in the rain.
Reality television stuff.
Yeah. But the reality is that the most devastating damage often happens in the total absence of volume.
It's not the explosions. It's the lack of oxygen.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
There is a vital distinction to be made between hearing and receiving.
Okay, break that down for me.
Well, you can hear the acoustic vibration of a voice.
The physical sound waves.
Right. But receiving means you are processing the information and actively signaling back to the speaker, I am with you, I comprehend you.
You're catching the ball.
Exactly. When receiving halts, a quiet, creeping discomfort takes over the whole ecosystem of the home.
It just poisons the well.
It does. The psychological toll of that repetitive non-response is just...
It's like on a random Tuesday for you.
Ah,
You say, hey, I was thinking of making chicken tonight, or do you want to order in?
and you get a blank stare.
Just a blank stare. Or you
Right.
mention a scheduling conflict, like, I have a dentist appointment on Thursday, so I might need you to grab the kids.
Nothing.
Nothing. Just the hum of the refrigerator.
Maddening.
I mean, one instance of this is a mild annoyance. You brush it off. But doing this dance for 15 years?
You start to wonder if you are speaking a different language.
Yes. You start to think, am I just incredibly boring? Is my voice inherently irritating?
Well, that internal monologue you're describing is a classic symptom of learned helplessness.
Learned helplessness. That makes so much sense.
The human brain is remarkably efficient at recognizing patterns. If you touch a stove and it doesn't burn you, you learn the stove is off.
Right.
If you speak and it consistently generates no reaction, your brain learns that your voice has no impact on your environment.
So you internalize the silence.
Yes, you internalize the silence of your partner not as a deficit in their communication skills, but as a reflection of your own fundamental lack of worth.
That is heartbreaking. It is exactly like being trapped in a soundproof room.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Yeah, I want you to imagine you are in a room entirely covered in that thick, gray acoustic foam.
Like a recording studio.
Exactly. And you start out speaking normally, but no one hears you.
Because the foam eats the sound.
Right. So you raise your voice, still nothing.
You're trying harder.
Yeah. Eventually, you are screaming at the top of your lungs into the void, and after a while, your throat is raw, you are exhausted, and you just stop trying to scream.
You just give up.
You sit down in the corner, and you assume your vocal cords must be broken.
Right. You blame yourself.
You think the problem is your voice. But the problem isn't your voice at all. The problem is the acoustic environment you are trapped in. The room is absorbing the sound.
The tragedy of that analogy is how perfectly it maps onto the physiological reality.
It really does.
You stop speaking because the environment has trained you out of it.
You're conditioned.
You are doing all the emotional heavy lifting to keep a baseline of functionality going, while the other person acts like a passive consumer of your existence.
A passive consumer. Wow.
Yeah, it creates an illusion of a relationship, but underneath it, there's just a gaping void of actual connection.
Which naturally begs the question, what on earth is driving the person who acts like the brick wall?
Why do they do it?
Right. Why would someone actively choose to make their partner feel invisible? I always just assumed it was severe burnout or, a lack of emotional intelligence.
Which is what people often say.
Yeah, but the mechanics behind it, according to the source, are actually much more calculated, even if it's entirely subconscious.
Burnout is often the socially acceptable cover story.
It's the excuse.
Exactly. But we dig into the structural psychology of this behavior, we hit a very specific driver known as the earnings card fallacy.
The earnings card. I love this term.
It's an incredibly pervasive phenomenon where a partner, historically and most commonly the husband, uses their financial contribution to the household as a shield against emotional participation.
I pay the bills, so leave me alone.
Yes, they monopolize conversational power and justify their silence by literally pointing to their paycheck.
I see this constantly. It's this unspoken ledger in the house.
An invisible balance sheet.
Right. It's the belief that bringing in a salary somehow buys you out of the basic human decency required to live with another person.
Which is wild when you think about it.
It is. And the really fascinating thing is that this is rooted in an incredibly immature, almost childish value system.
It is a massive logical fallacy.
How so?
Well, the artificial hierarchy they create equates financial value with human dominance.
They think money equals being the boss?
Right. But earning money and treating a partner with respect are two completely unrelated variables.
You can do both.
You should do both. Confusing a financial contribution with a license to demean, ignore, or stonewall a spouse reveals a fundamental developmental immaturity in how they view partnerships.
So you don't see it as a team?
No, they aren't viewing it as a mutual ecosystem. They are viewing it as an employer-employee dynamic where they are the sole shareholder.
And the irony, like the absolute staggering irony here, is who tends to wield this earnings card the most aggressively.
It's usually not who you'd expect.
No, you would think it would be the guy running a Fortune 500 company, managing 10,000 employees, literally collapsing from the sheer gravitational weight of his responsibility.
Billionaire CEO.
Right. But it's not. It is so often average earners wielding a perfectly average paycheck as a weapon of absolute superiority.
Which is the telltale sign that this behavior has absolutely nothing to do with actual financial stress or the demands of a high-powered career.
It's a power trip.
It is purely about power and control. If a person were truly under extraordinary, unique pressure, there might be a societal temptation to cut them a little slack.
Sure, we all have bad weeks.
Though, it still wouldn't excuse emotional abuse. But the prevalence of this attitude among people with standard 40-hour-a-week jobs proves that the exhaustion is a psychological defense mechanism.
It's just a handy excuse.
It's a convenient, culturally sanctioned way to avoid the terrifyingly hard work of emotional intimacy.
Now, let me push back on this just a little because I know there are people listening right now who are thinking, wait, work actually is exhausting.
Of course it is.
Right. If you have been dealing with a toxic boss all day, navigating brutal office politics, commuting for an hour in horrible traffic, shouldn't you be allowed a little grace?
Yes, absolutely.
Aren't you allowed to walk through your front door, shut down, and just not talk for a while?
There is a massive difference between boundary setting and stonewalling.
Okay, tell me the difference.
If you are exhausted, a mature adult uses their words to establish a boundary.
They actually speak.
Right. They walk in and say, I had a brutal day. I am completely depleted. I need 45 minutes in the bedroom to decompress, and then I will come help with dinner.
That sounds perfectly reasonable.
Because that is communication.
Yeah.
That is taking ownership of your own fatigue without making it your partner's problem.
So it's about claiming the space without punishing the other person for simply existing in the same house.
Precisely. Weaponizing that exhaustion is completely different.
What does that look like?
Stonewalling is walking in, sighing heavily, glaring at your spouse, ignoring their questions, and radiating a hostile energy that essentially says, my tired is more important than your existence.
You can feel the chill just talking about it.
That is the childish value system in action. Exhaustion is valid, but using your job as a permanent shield against the responsibilities of being a partner is where the line is crossed into emotional manipulation.
That distinction between boundary setting and stonewalling is so clarifying.
It's an important line to draw.
Because if they don't know how to set a healthy boundary, this immaturity doesn't just stay confined to how they view their paycheck.
No, it bleeds into everything.
It dictates the entire emotional weather system of the house, which leads us directly into how they handle negative emotions in general, which the source material touches on, and I like to call emotional dumping.
The phenomenon of bringing outside frustrations into the home is universal.
Yeah.
We all do it.
We're human.
But the dysfunction lies in the method of processing it. Instead of communicating the frustration, this personality type chooses silence and a dark, brooding mood as their primary megaphone.
Everyone listening knows exactly the feeling.
The dreaded entry.
Yes. The front door opens, you hear the keys hit the bowl, and the temperature in the house instantly drops 10 degrees.
Before they even speak.
You haven't even seen their face yet, but you can literally feel the barometric pressure shift.
That shift in pressure is a dereliction of adult responsibility.
It really is unfair.
Part of being a mature adult is regulating your own nervous system.
Self-soothe.
Right. When someone refuses to do that, they essentially force their spouse to become their emotional regulator.
They outsource it.
The husband in this scenario uses his bad mood as a puzzle the wife is forced to solve. He treats the home not as a mutual sanctuary, but as a landfill for his unprocessed feelings.
And he expects her to just sort through the garbage.
Exactly.
I call it asking to be guessed. It is this maddening, contradictory dynamic.
Oh, it's so frustrating.
He refuses to speak. If you ask him what's wrong, he'll likely snap, nothing.
But it's never nothing.
No. But he clearly wants you to notice he is upset. He wants you to flutter around him, offering solutions, bringing him a beer, trying to intuit the exact nature of his distress.
It is a very aggressive use of silence. We tend to think of silence as an absence of communication, but in this context, it is deafeningly loud.
It's an action.
It is a coercive behavior that basically says, I am in distress, it is your job to fix it, but I am going to make it as difficult as possible for you to succeed.
Setting you up to fail.
It completely abandons the vulnerability required to just say, hey, I feel insecure about a mistake I made at work today.
Because saying that requires humility.
And honesty.
Right. And if they are playing the earnings card, they can't show vulnerability. So instead, we get what I consider one of the most crazy-making behaviors in modern relationships.
The quick reset.
Yes.
The quick reset.
This is where the physiological disparity between the two partners becomes really, really stark.
Right. So picture this. He has been sulking for 3 hours.
Just dragging the whole house down.
Dragging his feet, sighing aggressively, maybe slamming a cabinet door or two. He has created this thick, unbearable tension.
Yeah, everyone is miserable.
And you, as the partner, are walking on eggshells. You are hyper-vigilant, trying not to set him off, and then suddenly his internal mood just shifts.
Like a light switch.
Exactly. Maybe he watches a funny video on his phone.
Yeah.
Maybe his sports team hits a home run. Maybe his blood sugar simply stabilizes after dinner.
It could be anything. And within 3 minutes, he is completely fine. He magically resets. He turns to you and cheerfully asks what you want to watch on Netflix.
He resets, entirely self-contained, without ever addressing the hours of emotional terrorism he just inflicted on the household.
It is literally an emotional hit and run.
That's the perfect term for it.
He crashes his bad mood into the living room, totals the entire evening, leaves you scrambling in the wreckage, trying to figure out what happened, and then he just drives off whistling.
Like nothing happened.
He acts like absolutely nothing occurred.
And while he has moved on, we have to look at what is happening to the wife's nervous system in that moment.
Right, because she doesn't reset that fast.
No. He feels better, so in his mind, the event is over. But her sympathetic nervous system is still fully activated.
He's in fight or flight.
She has been flooded with cortisol and adrenaline for 3 solid hours, trying to manage his silent rage.
That stuff doesn't just evaporate.
The physiological half-life of adrenaline doesn't just disappear because he found a funny meme on his phone. She is exhausted, jittery, and entirely depleted from the mental gymnastics of trying to read his mind.
And when she isn't instantly cheerful and ready to watch Netflix, she gets accused of holding a grudge or ruining the night.
Why are you being so moody?
Yes, exactly.
This self-contained resolution highlights a profound lack of empathy. It proves that he doesn't view the relationship as a shared emotional ecosystem.
He's the only real person in the house.
Basically, yeah. He views it as a stage for his own emotional fluctuations. Other people in the house are simply props. As long as the main character feels better, the scene is over.
So, if the reality of this is so draining and frankly so disrespectful, it forces us to confront a really uncomfortable question.
Why stay?
Well, not just why stay, but why does this dynamic persist at all? If it is this miserable, why does it become the permanent defining state of a 20-year marriage?
This is where we have to look at the other half of the equation.
The partner's reaction.
Yes. We have to look at the wife's reaction and the devastating trap of keeping the peace.
The peacekeeper trap.
It is a paradox. Wives often silently endure this treatment, swallowing the disrespect, because they feel it is the only way to keep the household running.
They take one for the team.
They absorb the blow so the kids don't feel it, or so the weekend isn't entirely ruined.
You endure it because you are the shock absorber.
Precisely.
You think your endurance is saving the family. But the brutal truth, as the source points out, is that your endurance is the exact glue holding his bad behavior in place.
We are talking about basic behavioral conditioning here.
Like training a dog.
Well, operant conditioning, specifically. Yeah. Why does a person continue a destructive behavior?
Because it works.
Because the behavior is being rewarded. Or at the very least, it is not being punished. Why are there no apologies after an emotional hit and run?
Because he doesn't think he did anything wrong.
Because he fundamentally doesn't feel the need to apologize. He hasn't lost anything.
I really want that to sink in for a second for the listener. He hasn't lost anything.
Nothing changes for him.
If he throws a silent tantrum, stonewalls you, and treats you like you are invisible, but you still cook his dinner, you still fold his laundry, you still manage his mother's birthday present, and you still keep the house functioning smoothly.
What is his motivation to self-reflect?
Exactly. He has zero motivation.
Human beings, generally speaking, follow the path of least resistance.
We're lazy by nature.
We adapt to the systems we are in. If his bad attitude has absolutely no negative consequences on his daily comfort, the behavior stops being an occasional lapse in judgment.
It just becomes who he is.
It becomes permanently calcified into his personality. If there is no disruption to his lifestyle, he will never see a reason to alter his communication style.
This is the tragic irony for so many highly capable people.
It really is.
Your greatest strength, your resilience, your empathy, your sheer logistical ability to multitask and keep the family moving forward despite this massive emotional drought.
It's all weaponized against you.
Yes. You are using your competence to buffer him from the consequences of his own incompetence.
And this brings us to a crucial ethical and practical dilemma in the source material.
What's the dilemma?
The idea of stopping that buffering, of returning energy that matches his attitude.
Matching his energy, right.
But society often frames that as being petty or vindictive.
Oh, you're being bitter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But psychologically speaking, it is a necessary mechanism for restoring equilibrium.
It's self-defense.
If you continuously offer high-level care, emotional warmth, and logistical support in exchange for hostility and silence, you are essentially telling him that the economic value of your care is zero.
So we are stuck. Talking doesn't work because you're in a soundproof room and he's not receiving your words.
The foam absorbs it.
Enduring it definitely doesn't work because your endurance acts as positive reinforcement for his tantrums.
You're rewarding the silence.
So what is the actual play here? If words have failed and patience is a trap, what can you actually do?
You pivot entirely away from verbal communication.
Wait, literally just stop talking.
You introduce the strategy of silent resistance. The core philosophy here is that if words have failed, you must stop wasting them.
You just stop.
You change the dynamic through action.
This is a revelation. Stop trying to explain to a brick wall why it shouldn't be a brick wall.
It's exhausting and pointless.
Stop trying to teach empathy to someone who is actively benefiting from not having it.
Precisely. You stop the desperate, flailing attempts to bridge the gap.
Because it's a one-way bridge.
Instead, you slowly and methodically withdraw the habitual, unreciprocated care and attentiveness that you've been freely providing.
Now, I want to be very clear about what this means practically, because it's easy to misinterpret this as a call to start a massive dramatic war.
Right, this isn't about vengeance.
This is not about throwing his golf clubs onto the lawn or smashing plates or screaming at him in front of the neighbors.
No, grand dramatic gestures are counterproductive.
Why?
Because they give a stonewaller exactly what they want. Proof that you are crazy or unstable.
Ugh. Which justifies their calm, cold silence.
Exactly. Silent resistance is much more subtle and mathematically much more devastating.
How does it work?
It is a reallocation of your own energy. It means you stop making the elaborate meals tailored perfectly to his dietary whims while he ignores you.
Let him make his own sandwich.
You stop managing his social calendar. Most importantly, you stop the unreciprocated emotional labor of constantly checking his emotional temperature.
Let's put this into a practical scenario, going back to the heavy sigh at the front door.
A classic trigger.
The old dynamic, the endurance dynamic, looks like this. He walks in, drops his bag, and sighs like he's carrying the weight of the world.
Right.
You instantly drop what you are doing, rush over, and ask, is something wrong? Are you mad? Did the meeting go badly?
You take the bait.
You flutter around him, offering solutions, basically absorbing his toxic energy into your own body.
And how does that scenario play out using silent resistance?
Under the new dynamic, he walks in, he drops his bag, he sighs heavily.
Okay, the bait is cast.
You hear the sigh. You acknowledge internally that a sigh has occurred. And then you turn the page of your book, take a sip of your tea, and do absolutely nothing.
Beautiful.
You do not ask what is wrong. You completely ignore the performance.
And it's the perfect execution of the strategy. You are refusing to participate in the guessing game.
Not my puzzle to solve.
You are declining the invitation to his emotional chaos.
It is like cutting the microphone feed.
Oh, I like that.
He is on stage, putting on this elaborate, silent, brooding performance of misery. He is expecting an audience of one to fret over him.
To validate his exhaustion.
But you just quietly get up, leave the theater, and go get a snack in the lobby. You don't boo, you don't throw tomatoes, you just unplug his mic.
What is remarkable about this approach is how violently it disrupts his comfort.
Oh, I bet it drives them crazy.
And how clearly it communicates dissatisfaction. Because, for a personality that relies on the earnings card and weaponized silence, a verbal argument is just noise.
They can just tune it out.
They can ignore it, or they can twist it to accuse you of nagging. But the sudden calm withdrawal of your panic,
It gets their attention.
the sudden absence of your caretaking, that registers instantly.
Because you have messed with his utilities.
Exactly. The withdrawal of your emotional labor forces him to realize that your attention, your warmth, and your care are not basic utilities.
They aren't just the running water.
Right. They don't just exist in the house by default, regardless of how he behaves. They are voluntary gifts, and gifts can be revoked.
That is powerful.
Establishing this quiet, physical boundary communicates more effectively to this specific psychological profile than thousands of hours of couples therapy ever could.
But I have to interject here because to have the ice in your veins to pull that off,
He takes nerve.
to have the sheer nerve to sit there calmly drinking your tea while the man who pays half or all of the mortgage is stomping around sighing heavily, that requires a foundation of confidence.
A huge foundation.
And you cannot confidently ignore a bully if you feel entirely trapped by them. This brings us back to the reality of the power dynamic.
It is the elephant in the room, and it must be addressed practically.
Let's talk about the money.
A husband's arrogant attitude, his willingness to leverage silence and disrespect, is almost always bolstered by his knowledge, whether conscious or subconscious, that his wife is financially dependent on him.
It's the ace up his sleeve.
He knows or believes that she fears the economic devastation of a divorce more than she hates his behavior,
It is the unspoken leverage hanging over the dinner table every single night.
dictating the terms of the marriage.
He can act however he wants because he knows at the end of the day where you're going to go. You can't afford rent in the school district on your own.
And because of that harsh reality, creating an emotional boundary requires creating a practical safety net.
You need a backup plan.
It is vital to note that advocating for financial preparedness is not the same as advocating for immediate divorce.
That's a huge distinction.
Building a safety net is not inherently an act of aggression. It is an act of self-preservation.
It is about generating options.
Yes, the concept of bait TNA.
Bait TNA. What's that?
It's a negotiation term. Your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. In business, you can't negotiate a fair deal if walking away means you go bankrupt.
Right, they own you at that point.
The same applies to marital dynamics. You need actionable steps. This means slowly increasing personal savings, even if it is $20 a week in a separate account.
Just something that is yours.
It means gathering information on how to generate independent income. It means evaluating your resume, updating certifications, or taking a part-time class to dust off old job skills.
And the reason this is so crucial, and if you are listening to this in your car or watering the dishes, I want you to really hear this, is the profound psychological shift it creates within you, even if you never, ever leave.
The internal shift is massive.
You could stay married for another 50 years. But knowing in your bones, I could survive without you if I had to, completely changes the posture of your spine when you walk into a room.
It removes the scent of desperation from the dynamic.
That's beautifully put.
When you know you have a safety net, you no longer negotiate your daily existence from a position of absolute terror.
You aren't just begging for scraps.
This practical preparedness fundamentally alters the balance of power because it strips the husband of his invisible leverage. He can no longer implicitly rely on your fear of poverty to enforce his dominance.
It changes the entire frequency of the relationship. When you are no longer terrified of the worst-case scenario, your tolerance for daily indignities plummets.
You stop putting up with it.
You stop walking on eggshells because you suddenly realize that the floor underneath those eggshells is actually solid concrete.
That it's solid because you poured it yourself.
Exactly. You poured the concrete. You can't calmly drink your tea during his silent tantrum if you are internally spiraling about how you would pay for groceries if he got mad and left.
Survival takes over.
Financial preparedness gives you the mental breathing room required to actually enforce those emotional boundaries.
Which culminates in the ultimate philosophical goal of this entire process, detailed in the source.
The end game.
Right. It's not just about hiding away a secret savings account or learning how to ignore a heavy sigh. It is about a fundamental tectonic shift in how you view your own identity within your own home.
Reclaiming your space.
It is about reclaiming your mental boundary.
I found a mantra in the research for this deep dive that I think perfectly encapsulates this. It said, living together doesn't mean surrendering your heart.
That is a phenomenal summary.
Isn't it?
It speaks to the concept of emotional sovereignty. Just because you share a mortgage, a roof, and a dinner table with another human being does not mean you are contractually obligated to allow their internal emotional weather to dictate your self-worth.
You don't have to absorb their storm.
You do not have to permit someone else's unmanaged neuroses to drain your life force.
It is about decoupling the logistics of a marriage from the core of your identity. Being married, raising children together, splitting the utility bills, that is one set of facts.
Logistical facts.
Accepting daily mistreatment, silence, and disrespect, that is a completely different set of facts. They are not a package deal, even if society has conditioned us to believe they are.
And practically speaking, achieving this sovereignty relies on the aggregation of marginal gains.
What do you mean by marginal gains?
Well, grand, sweeping ultimatums rarely work. If you sit down and say, we are completely overhauling our communication style tonight, or else, it usually results in massive anxiety, intense pushback, and ultimately failure.
It's too big of a shock to the system.
It puts too much pressure on a system that is already structurally unsound.
Right, because it's asking the brick wall to suddenly turn into a sponge. It won't happen.
Exactly. The real power lies in micro-adjustments.
Small steps.
Caring 5% less about his mood when he walks in the door. Setting aside a little bit of money. Pulling back a fraction of your excess, unappreciated domestic labor.
Just dialing it back a notch.
These tiny, almost imperceptible shifts compound over weeks and months, and they inevitably alter the entire atmospheric pressure of the home.
It is an incredibly empowering realization because you are completely giving up the exhausting, impossible task of trying to change him.
You can't change him.
Trying to change a grown adult who uses their paycheck to justify their lack of empathy is a fool's errand. Instead, you are changing where you stand.
You change your coordinates in the ecosystem.
I love that.
And when you change your coordinates, the entire system is mathematically forced to shift around you to accommodate your new position.
You stop being the emotional Roomba, constantly sweeping up his messes, and suddenly he has to step in his own dirt.
What a visual.
You realize that your compliance, your endless empathy, was the key ingredient making his bad behavior possible. When you quietly remove that ingredient, his recipe fails.
The mechanics of this are undeniable. It requires moving from a state of reactive panic to a state of proactive, calm sovereignty.
This has been such a dense, heavy, but ultimately illuminating exploration.
We covered a lot of ground.
We really did. To briefly retrace the map of what we've uncovered today, we started by naming the silent erosion.
The physical and emotional toll.
The physiological and emotional devastation of your voice losing its weight when it continually hits that brick wall, and the tragedy of learned helplessness.
We deconstructed the childish psychology behind the earnings card fallacy.
Such an important concept.
Exposing how financial leverage is used as a shield against emotional vulnerability, and how the home is turned into a dumping ground through the weaponization of silence.
And then we confronted the paradox of endurance.
Why staying silent doesn't fix it.
How keeping the peace and absorbing the shock actually rewards and permanently calcifies the bad behavior because it removes all consequences.
And most importantly, we mapped out the escape route.
The action plan.
Pivoting from words to action through silent resistance, withdrawing unreciprocated labor, neutralizing the invisible leverage through financial preparedness, and finally, establishing emotional sovereignty.
Living together does not mean surrendering your heart. Now, before we go, I want to leave you with a final, lingering thought to mull over.
Something to take with you.
We have spent this entire deep dive examining how this dynamic plays out in the highly specific, closed ecosystem of a marriage.
But it's broader than that.
Exactly. Human behavior scales. I want you to look at the rest of your life. Where else are you enduring someone's silent tantrums?
It happens everywhere.
Is it a passive-aggressive boss who uses their title the way a husband uses the earnings card? Is it a sibling who ruins every family holiday by making everyone guess why they were sulking?
We all know someone like that.
What would happen tomorrow if you simply decided to stop being their audience? What would happen if you stopped fluttering, poured yourself a cup of tea, and just cut the mic feed?
The mechanics of power, silence, and compliance apply everywhere. Once you learn how to unplug the microphone, you can use that skill in any theater.
Keep protecting your time. Keep protecting your energy. And please remember that just because the person standing in front of you refuses to listen, it does not mean your voice has lost its weight.
It still matters.
Don't let a brick wall convince you that you don't know how to speak. Thank you for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next one.